What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I am back with yet another collection update. I know I've been doing a lot of these here lately, but I am trying to catch up to all the stuff that I got before I get down to year-end lists, because there's a lot of new releases in these batches, as well as reissues, random pickups, and in this one, I got at least a couple of offerings here from some fans. They actually sent me some stuff, and I was happy to go over it. So yeah, once again, we got a lot of stuff to go over, and I'm just going to get right down to it. Intestine, Baalism, Ultimate Instinct. This is the third album, and as it stands, the most recent one. I believe this band is actually getting back in the studio and releasing something new possibly next year. Anyway, this is their third album. This is Japanese melodic death metal. I would say like kind of underground legends in a way. This was a gift sent to me by our buddy Edgar. He actually tipped me off a while ago about the re-releases of their first two albums, and then he managed to get 2 copies of this and said, hey, would you like a copy of their third album? And I was like, of course, thank you very much. Edgar's pretty damn cool about that, except for like the whole, the rack thing, which, I've kind of forgiven him. Anyway, I already love this band. I think their debut is absolutely amazing. Second album's absolutely killer too. This one is a little bit different, and the way it's set up is, I don't know, it's kind of strange, but it also makes this like a very interesting listen. Basically, this band's style of melodic death metal is brutal as hell. Like, for a melodic death metal band, because I do think they still kind of fit there, they have a lot of just straight up death metal tropes. Very brutal vocals, heavy blast beats, just relentless, brutal riffing. But they always find a way to squeeze in like melodic death metal tropes, like those very like Gothenburg style guitar harmonies you hear all over like Early in Flames, At the Gates, etc. They don't muddle around with like clean vocals at all. You do get like some vocal dynamics between like low guttural roars and then like harsh screams, but it comes across more like, carcass, I would say. Now, the reason I think this one is particularly interesting in terms of its setup is every track, I feel like one track is exceptionally brutal, like more focused on flat out death metal. And then the next track is decidedly more focused on melodic death metal, where you start getting more of the harmonies. You also hear predominantly more of like that, kind of mellow death scream. Like, again, like it's more like the, Thomas Lindbergh style vocal. And it's throughout the entire album. Like the opening track, Agony in the Stone Chamber, is brutal as hell. Like, bolt thrower style, chugging and double time drums. You get those gnarly carcass style guitars on there. It's just a relentless beating. And then the next track, Cry for the Black Sun, decidedly more melodic. Like, it's still intense, but it feels way more focused on the melody. And again, that is throughout the entire album. Like the next track, Longing for Birth, brutal as hell. And then the following track, Awakening, way more melodic. It's almost like this was like 2 different EPs, one that was going to be focused more on the more brutal side, and then one that's going to be focused on more of the melodic side, were kind of smashed together, but instead of like doing it like back to back, they kind of mixed up the tracks. There are some things that kind of mix up a little bit, like you get some colder, almost more blackened tremolos on the title track and Awakening. And Cry for the Black Sun has some almost like proggy moments on it. Like you have like some really interesting layered guitar harmonies that aren't necessarily like straightforward melodeath, and you have like a acoustic guitar behind it, and just the way the song is structured in terms of the transitions, it has like a slightly proggy flair to it. These guys are amazing musicians across the board. I haven't heard anything from this band that I didn't like, and that includes this one. I will say that the drum mix feels a little off at times. Like sometimes the levels feel a little weird. Like sometimes they're just really too quiet. But outside of that, I dig this. This band has put out nothing but bangers in my opinion. Once again, thank you very much, Edgar, for sending me a copy of this. If you're a big fan of, I'd say like Bloodbath, Vehemence, Carcass, both the more melodic stuff and like, stuff around like Symphonies of Sickness and Necroticism too. Check this out. Check out all their stuff. Everything by Intestine, Baalism is awesome in my opinion. Mork Syv. This is the 7th album from this Norwegian black metal act. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever listened to this band. I've heard about them for years. A lot of people talked them up. They played at MDF last year, and I sadly missed them because more than likely another band that I really wanted to see was playing at the same time. I heard they were awesome, and I've been meaning to check out this band for a while. Like, I've heard glowing reviews from fans of this band, and honestly, I kind of get it. Now, You're gonna have to forgive me because everything on here is in Norwegian, so yeah, I'm just pretty much getting ready to board the struggle bus here trying to pronounce stuff. But this band is really interesting in terms of like the variety on here. Like this isn't just like one particular style of black metal. It's very riff oriented. It's not like, you know, all blast beats and droning tremolos and just screams in the darkness. There's a lot going on here. Almost to the point I would say like there's almost kind of like a progressive flair to their style. Some of this I would say is kind of comparable to Enslaved in a way, though not quite as proggy. Like you don't get like the lush synth textures and like clean vocals all the time, but there's frequently riff changes on here and stylistic shifts all over the place. Some of this stuff honestly kind of has like a black and roll feel. Like there's stuff in it that kind of reminded me a bit of like Kvelertak, definitely like Vreed too. And honestly, some of the more like straightforward, like riff oriented stuff that Darkthrone has been putting out, though I'd say like a little bit more flashy, like you have like folky transitions on Holmgang, maybe that's how you say that, or like more blasty, more aggressive stuff on Utbrent. The opening track, Aeturnus Vervel, and the sixth track, Ont Blood, both have like really cool syncopated grooves. Like there's a lot of really catchy hooks on here too. Vocally there's some dynamic too, like it's just not screams. Like there's like really catchy cleans on Ont Blood. And the instrumental Till Svendi Agsist, I'm sorry, I probably royally butchered that one. Really awesome songwriting. There's even strings incorporated into it. I really dig this. I definitely want to check out more by this band in the future. I know they have a pretty hefty back catalog. But yeah, like this is kind of like the black metal that I kind of lean more towards here lately, where it's, you know, more riff oriented and, you know, kind of clever in a way in terms of songwriting. Like it doesn't necessarily follow kind of the standard black metal playbook. If you're a big fan of, I would say, Enslaved, again, Vreed, definitely some Darkthrone in there too. Check this out. This was really good. Riot V, or Riot, I don't know. It's kind of the same band, but they put the V on there. I guess that's a distinction. Armor of Light. Either way, combined with just regular Riot and Riot V, because I think it's all the same thing. This is the 15th album overall from these New York City heavy metal veterans. I mean, you could almost argue proto-metal at one point because their earlier material kind of was, you know, not necessarily metal flat out, but it definitely turned into that, especially with Fire Down Under, which I think is an absolute banger of an album. Front to back, that album is just nothing but the best riffs and just absolutely killer vocals and all that stuff. And I've been meaning to check out the more recent stuff because, you know, this band has been going on for a while and I still hear people talk about them like very highly in terms of the music they put out. And honestly, this is pretty good. It's not, you know, kind of like that classic sound that you get on, like, again, like Fire Down Under, but this is like, I would say like pretty solid classic heavy metal, maybe a touch on the power metal side. There's kind of a gray area where those two kind of overlap on here. Like, yeah, you get like the big heavy metal harmonies, the soaring vocals, the gallop drums, but there's definitely something about this that has like more of a power metal vibe. And though I'm not a big fan of this band, it kind of does remind me of Dragon Force a little bit, like minus the outright wankery that band kind of thrives on. But in terms of like the pace, where this kind of has that like more European power metal sound where it's just a lot of like stampeding double bass and just flying riffs and big ascending soaring choruses. And to their credit, this band does it really well. The vocals on here are solid as hell. Honestly, it do kind of reminds me of a young Joey Belladonna. And for an older band, granted, I think there's only like maybe a couple of original members, maybe just one. This band sounds energetic. They're bombastic. Like all the songs in here are, you know, just kind of brimming with energy. The production sounds polished. It doesn't sound too overproduced. The vocals still sound very natural. And while this album definitely sticks to like a faster pace, like again, lots of galloping drums, there's some good mid-tempo cuts on there to kind of like give that, you know, fist-pumping heavy metal anthem vibe. Caught in the Witch's Eye, Set the World Alight, Ready to Shine, which honestly kind of reminded me a little bit of Queen. Just good, like, straightforward heavy metal anthems that you can just bang your head to. Burn the Daylight kind of stood out to me as like a bit of a throwback to their earlier sound. Like there's stuff in there that reminds me more of like Deep Purple. Like it's a little bit more close to their early proto-metal sound. Overall though, you know, I think this is a pretty solid album. It does get a little samey, like a lot of the anthemic tracks tend to, feel like they're kind of the same anthem reorganized a little bit. Not bad, but, it does kind of like plod on. I do really like the last track, Raining Fire, as being a decidedly more thrashy, aggressive number. I probably could have used a little bit more of that because when they get thrashing, it kind of sounds like Flotsam and Jetsam. But yeah, I dug this. I definitely want to get more Riot in the future, or Riot V, whatever the hell you want to call them. This was just a flat out fun release. If you're a big fan of, again, just like classic heavy metal and maybe like a little bit of like power metal, like there's definitely like some Blind Guardian, Halloween-ish tropes on here too. Check this out. This was pretty solid. Dungeon Crawl, Maze Controller. This is the second album from this California-based D&D obsessed kind of melodic death thrash act. There are tons of fantasy driven bands out there, like, Wizards and Warriors and all that, but this might be the first time I have heard a band that is specifically all about Dungeons and Dragons. When I read up on this band, I saw that they had like this D&D theme. I was like, all right, let's see how far they take it. And then I looked at some of the song titles, like Roll for Initiative. That is the opening track, the lead in. Yeah, it gets better. We have +1 mace, Lords of Pen and Paper, Saving Throw. Yeah, they flat out committed. And honestly, it's pretty damn awesome. Like, I like bands that have like weird themes. I think that's just, kind of fun. Stylistically, this kind of wasn't what I was expecting because this was definitely advertised as more like of a straight up like thrash band or death thrash. And honestly, like listening to this, it reminds me more of like, Children of Bodom or Kalma. It's definitely death thrash, but this band likes synths, melodies. There's a lot of big, epic, borderline power metal melodies in here, but the vocals stay very harsh, and it's just loaded with like big, aggressive, riffy sections to kind of like balance it out a bit. I instantly love the more like thrashy, just kind of ripping songs like The Arcane Temptation, Red Shadows, the title track, and Wolves Beyond the Border. Those songs are high energy, tons of just fast-paced riffs, great shreddy leads. But I also like their more epic side, especially Lords of Pen and Paper. That song is the longest song on the album. It is what I would call the crit hit on here because it is just kind of everything wrapped up in one. You get their thrashier side, huge epic melodies, giant builds, great lead work. It's just a ton of fun to listen to. I will say that there are points that did drag a little bit on here, like namely Lost in the Shifting Labyrinth, which is kind of a long interlude track, like it's synths and spoken word, and it's essentially the dungeon master reading off stuff. I don't know. I really didn't play D&D very much. I was more of a sci-fi kid than a fantasy kid back then. Now, there are points in here that do kind of drag a bit. Lost in the Shifting Labyrinth is a kind of long interlude. Like it's, got like, I want to say like folky music and synths, and there's some spoken word, and probably would have been fine if it was only like a minute, but it kind of drags on, like I want to say like over the 3-minute mark. And the last track, The Forbidden Scrolls, is kind of a bit of a lackluster outro, like again, more atmosphere, more, stuff to tie in with the theming, which I think they do fantastically throughout the music itself. It's just those tracks were a little bit, I don't know, just too much, like maybe kind of like padding out the length of this a bit. I will say also at points that synths can be just a little bit too cheesy, like, a little too power metal-y for me. That's just me. They do work well with the music though, so I can't fault them too much. But overall, this was fun. Like, this is just a flat out fun release. I like the very direct theme they have in terms of like Wizards and Warriors. Like, yeah, go for the game that got so many people into it. If you're a big fan, again, I would say like Children of Bodom. There's like some Skeleton Witch-esque stuff on here. There's points in here that kind of reminded me a bit of Insiferum too. Just check this out. This was just a super fun listen overall. Funeral Leech, The Illusion of Time. This is the second album from this New York City-based death doom act. I was a big fan of their debut album, Death Meditation, in 2020, and somehow I kind of just overlooked this one. With as many releases that have been dropping this year, I'm bound to overlook a whole bunch, and believe me, I've done my best to try to cover everything that I've wanted to cover on here, which is probably why we're still on collection updates right now. But when I saw this one when I was, picking up my copy of Dungeon Crawl, I was like, oh, shit, how the hell did I miss that? And honestly, this is even better than their debut. Huge, swampy atmosphere, big droning riffs. The production here, I think, is a bit better than the debut too. Like there's just more of a full sound going on. The guitars sound great. The vocals are particularly swampy and gurgly, but well enunciated. Honestly, reminds me a lot of Temple of Void. And once again, back to the production, this is a Dan Lowndes mix, which, I mean, you know, Cruciamentum and a ton of different things that he's just produced really well. He gives this album like a much more murky, sinister sound than the debut. You, of course, get like giant droning death doom breakdowns in the opening track and the Sky Wept and the last track, The Tower. And the Sky Wept in particular has these really awesome, just low-end synths that drone in the background, just kind of thickens up the sound even more. Ceaseless Wheel of Becoming is a big standout for me because that one is, I think, one of the more dynamic tracks in terms of like showing off a little bit more of what they do. Like you get blast beat sections and of course just lumbering, disgusting, slow plodding riffs. And the riff work in here is awesome. Like it doesn't just drone its ass off. Like there's a lot of intricacy, a lot of cool harmonies. Penance, I think, is another good one too. There's some guest vocals on there that, you know, kind of like stir up the vocal dynamics a bit because they're kind of like hardcore-ish, but they're like ghastly hardcore. Like there's a lot of extra at the end of them. But my personal favorite in here is probably the last track, The Tower. It's almost Funeral Doom. It's the longest song. It's the slowest song. It is probably the most oppressive song on here. The thing is just pure murk and misery, but done so damn well. The sinister tremolos in that song in particular, I absolutely love. Reminded me a lot of Mortiferum. There's also some just dreary synths that cap off the song. The only song that I had really any issue with was Chronofiction, and it really doesn't have much to do with the music itself. It's the fact that it kind of fades out at a really odd point, and it just feels like it leaves like some song on the table, like it just chose to fade out way too soon. But everything else in here, I think, is absolutely killer. This is just flat out solid death doom, bordering on funeral doom at times. I mean, if you love bands like Hooded Menace, Temple of Void, Skepticism, Evokin, stuff like that. If any of that sounds good, check this out. This is absolutely awesome and problematic because I want to include it in a year-end list, but I don't know if I have room at this point. I don't know. Check it out regardless. It's awesome. Vile Rites, Senescence, I think that's how you say that. Anyway, this is the debut full length from this California-based progressive death metal, technical death metal act. I became a fan of this band with their debut EP, The Ageless. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. This band also features members of Laceration, Mortuous, and Vector. And I heard a lot of people talking about this one. I had planned on getting it, but again, there's just so many releases. But I finally got it. And yeah, anyone that said this was awesome was right. This is absolutely fantastic. Technical, progressive death metal. It kind of lurks between both because, I mean, you get a lot of like really intricate, flashy riffs, but I would say this is way more about songwriting than it is like just showing off technical flair. It opens up with like somber guitars, it sets a nice mood, and then explodes into blast beats and just intricate angular riffs. Lots of cool atmospheric tropes. Some of them are a little interesting. There's a break in the opening track, which I'm trying to read them, but they put them at the top of the album and they are like the smallest font possible and in cursive. So yeah, thanks for making that easy. But anyway, the opening track, it's the only something, I don't know. There's a point in there where it has this very spacey atmosphere. It almost sounds like you're on Space Mountain for a second. There's another one on here where there's like lots of rain and storm soundscapes too, and kind of how it weaves into the song I think is really cool. Again, I would tell you which one, but I can't read it, and I probably should have wrote down the full track names on my notes. Regardless of that, I can definitely tell you that the music on here is fantastic. Lots of just intricate songwriting dynamics. There's stuff in here that reminds me a lot of like The Faceless before The Faceless kind of destroyed everything. Cryptic Shift, I would say, is also a really good comparison. Tons of crazy riff changes, dissonant melodies. There's flashy bass work on here. Might be fretless, I'm not entirely sure. Either way, it's absolutely awesome. The song Transcendent, Perfection, maybe? I don't know. I'm trying to really make these out. A little bit more like blackened atmosphere, like it's technical, but it's very cold and icy sounding. There's also really good clean playing. The atmosphere on it is just kind of like tense, like you can kind of feel this like welling up of nervous energy before it explodes. But the last track in particular, which, yeah, no, I give up. I love that one. It's the big 11-minute closer. You pretty much just get everything in this track. There are some particularly awesome, lurching, dissonant riffs on there. They harmonize those riffs too. It just creates this very dark, sinister atmosphere, but a lot of the stuff is very tuneful. Brilliant lead work across the board too. Vocals are great. Drum work is absolutely insane. Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. Like in terms of like more technical death metal, I can get into this because this has like progressive death metal song structure. Like, again, more about the songwriting than it is about showing off how many notes you can hit in a single measure. So yeah, if you are, again, are a big fan of like the Faceless, especially around like autotheism or a Cryptic Shift. Cryptic Shift, I think, is like kind of a perfect example. Check this album out. Absolutely amazing. Please make the songs like, you know, readable on the back next time, because that's just hell on, I think, just about everyone's eyes. Outside of that, fantastic album here. Human Impact, Gone Dark. This is the second album from this New York City-based noise rock kinda supergroup. This band features members of bands like Unsane, Swans, and Cop Shoot Cop. I own their first album. I thought it was pretty damn solid, and I'm a big Unsane fan, so I kind of just follow those members around as much as I can. And while I liked their debut, I think this is a better album. It definitely draws more comparisons to Unsane, like in terms of the style. Like you get a lot of like repeating, bludgeoning riffs and like these fun off-time grooves and shouted vocals. This album, though, I think definitely explores more atmosphere and melody. And there's just like a little bit more than just like the straight up kind of just like brick to the face sort of style that Unsane is known for. One of the reasons I think this one sounds a little bit different is I feel like the synths are a little bit more prominent. I don't remember there being a tremendous amount of them on the debut, but here they kind of just like make the atmosphere sound a little bit more lush. And in the periods where they're not just like beating you over the head with like just a heavy, sludgy, dirty, squawky riff, it kind of opens it up a little bit and adds a little bit of atmosphere. Even the vocals kind of take a break from the rhythmic shouting and kind of deliver, I wouldn't say like necessarily cleans, but just, you know, softer passages. That isn't to say this album isn't heavier than hell at points. Reform, Disconnect, Corrupted, those songs kind of bring that like just nasty kind of helmet-ish energy that you kind of expect from, well, at least Unsane, and probably some Swans too. It has that like not quite metal heaviness. Like it's still heavy, but it's not necessarily in a metallic way. Like the riffs don't scream metal, but they are, again, like savage in terms of their delivery. They're very primal. Definitely more like adjacent to like hardcore and post-hardcore, I would say. I do really like the drum work too. Like this band is known for like kind of those same off-time rhythms that Unsane does, but there's some like fun stuff in terms of like more industrial passages that show up. I think that's Disconnect or Corrupted. The ghost-noted snare on Imperative I thought was a nice touch. Again, like a little bit more atmospheric. This is just a solid release. If you are already a big fan of Unsane and Swans and probably Cop Shoot Cop, I haven't listened to those guys in a while, but I would also say like Helmet, Quicksand, like it's in that vein of bands that were, again, like heavy but not necessarily metal. Check this out. Really solid release. I think this is an improvement over the debut. And again, if you're looking for something that is heavy but not necessarily metal, this definitely fits that. Temple of Dread, God of the Godless. This is the fifth album from this German death metal act. We actually went over the last one, Beyond Acheron, a while ago. The band actually thanked us for the review, which was really cool. This band features current and former members of bands like Slaughter Day and Obscenity, and this is just flat out old school death metal, very thrashy. Like this is a very fast-paced album overall. And honestly, like the first thing I thought of was, man, this band really sounds like Morgoth a lot. Well, all right, Morgoth with like a ton of Slayer riffs, because again, like thrash is all over here. This is just loaded with like fast-paced drums, machine gun riffs, you know, kind of a growled but shouted delivery. Like a lot of this just has that thrashy bite, and you know, it just kind of drives the album. Not a lot of solos, but they make up for it with like really solid harmonies. Like Prophetic Misanthropy has a really awesome harmonized tremolo riff that just sounds sinister and evil as hell. When you get down to like the groovier breakdowns or some of the more groove-laden tracks on here, you get a lot more like just harmonized lead melodies. Monstrosity Divine in particular I thought was a really solid one. It starts off more brooding, a little bit more groove laden, there's more atmosphere, it sounds evil as shit, and then as the song goes on, it builds into like a big thrashy barn burner. The title track in particular too has some very like classic death harmonies on it too. All this just has like an air of like 90s to like late 80s death metal, and that sort of sound will always appeal to me. It's one of those, while I've definitely heard a lot of stuff like this before, it's stuff that I still like. I think the production on here is really solid too. The guitars have a great crunch to them. The drums are nice and punchy sounding. Love the vocals too. I will say that it does stick to that thrashy pace for a good chunk of this album, but it is broken up, you know, pretty nicely in terms of like riff changes and transitions and the occasional breakdown. The closing track in particular, Demise of Olympus, does open it up a little bit. You get some clean melodies, which might be the first clean melodies that really popped up on this album for a long stretch of songs. And that song is a little bit more brooding and atmospheric. It's got this really interesting like kind of muffled fade out at the end with the drums and such. I just flat out enjoyed this album. Like, this is just kind of my wheelhouse for just old school death metal. It brings riffs, it's energetic, it doesn't sound like it's like rinse and repeat over and over again, and it has a ton of energy to it. If you're a big fan, again, of Morgoth, Pestilence, Death, like, you know, a lot of classic stuff, check this out. Check out this band in general. I still need to get more of their stuff. I don't know if this one's better than the last one. If anything, it's like kind of a close tie. But yeah, if you just like old school death metal, I'm pretty sure you're going to dig this. So check it out. Morticide. Death Cannot Hold Those with Purpose. This is the second album from this New York-based death metal act / blackened death metal act. This was sent to me by a longtime friend, fan of the channel, the Just Joshing. This is his project that he has been working on for years. He actually sent me their first album forever ago with the shirt. Thank you once again. And this is sort of morphed into like a full band now. He has a full lineup on here, and this is honestly the best thing that they've put out so far. While I liked the first album, it was definitely a little bit rough around the edges in terms of like song construction, production, etc. This is a big improvement. The songs feel more fleshed out, more dynamic, a lot more intricate riff work on here, like just savage, brutal, nasty death metal riffs all over the place. There are some blackened elements, but I feel like they're kind of just peppered in there for atmosphere occasionally, like you get cold tremolos and such. But it's their death metal side that I feel just kind of packs the bigger punch on here. But it's a wide swath of death metal overall. You get a lot of like, you know, heavy tremolos and stuff, like very Morbid Angel, incantation, immolation kind of stuff, but also like flat out brutal death metal, because I know that Josh loves Suffocation. We've definitely bonded over that band many a time. And the brutal death metal elements that show up on like the title track, let's see, To Sever the Mortal Coil, Death Awaits, like there are flat out just disgusting slam riffs, and they transition well between like those giant slams and just like intricate, more like kind of like thrashy death metal riffs. Distortions of Humanity does have a bit of a thrashier bite to it, like there's a little bit of deicide energy to it. Overall, I see this as a huge improvement from the first one. When I was talking to him, he actually said that the drums were actually programmed on here, and I honestly thought they were real. And that was like one of the big things that I liked about it, was like, dude, this sounds way more natural. This sounds like a band, because, you know, the first album, it was a very obvious drum machine program, and it really didn't have like the polish to at least make it sound like a real drummer. This actually sounds like it was a real drummer. Like I was kind of fooled on there. The fills and transitions I think are a lot more clever, and again, the overall sound of like pretty much everything on here is just better. I will say that I do think the vocal production is a little dry, and it's really exposed in the higher vocals. Like they just sound way more strained. Josh's vocals really sit more comfortably in that death metal range. Like his mid to low growls I think are savage as hell. And while I like the blackened atmosphere that showed up on a couple of tracks in here, I think maybe focusing more purely on death metal. When it comes down to like blackened death metal in general, I generally lean towards, you know, bands that are a little bit more death metal than black metal in that category. I like black metal as like more of a seasoning in there to kind of like add some atmosphere. So if they were to do that like a little bit more, like just in terms of like just add that atmosphere and then kind of just stick with overall death metal brutality. I think that would work beautifully. Overall, dude, this is sick. Like, I like everything about this. Dude, the logo is a huge improvement. The artwork's sick. The production's much better. Like, you literally did better at, like, everything on here. And yeah, if you guys are big fans of, you know, like Morbid Angel, Suffocation, Deicide, Incantation, just like really sick death metal, check this out. Awesome job, Josh. Thank you once again for sending me this. Goetia, Tomb Essence. This is the second EP from this DC-based death metal / death grind act. I actually ran into their drummer at MDF this year. He actually gave me a copy of their first EP on tape, which I actually bought a copy of it on CD. They did a second print finally. I loved that first EP. The thing is just snarling and vicious, and this is more of the same, and that is in no way a dig at all. I love this band's sound. It's vicious, snarly, thrashy death grind, like very much in the vein of bands like Exhumed, Sadistic Ritual. This kicks off right away with a needle drop, an Evil Dead sample, and then it just throttles you. Thrashy riff after thrashy riff, galloping drums, blast beats, D beats. This band is just explosive as hell. The snarled vocals and grisly production on here. I dig pretty much everything about this band. This EP is densely packed with riff after riff, killer harmonies, shreddy leads, lots of dive bombs. And I will say there is like at least one track that kind of breaks out a bit more in terms of what I've heard from them. Hammer of the Witches, notably more black metal sounding, like it's colder, it's a little bit more sinister sounding. It still has their explosive, like exhumed-like energy to it, but it does have like a slightly different tinge. And much like the last one, they did throw in a cover, and this time they did an absolutely just disgusting cover of Creator's Ripping Corpse. They absolutely crushed that cover. I pretty much expected that. This is a short release overall. Like, I want to say it's probably under 20 minutes, much like their first one, but I dig everything on here. This is just absolutely snarling and vicious from start to finish, and that's exactly what I want. If you're a big fan, again, of Sadistic Ritual, Exhumed, bands that are very much in that vein, like a lot of thrash metal, but also some grind and death metal mixed in, check this band out. Check out either EP. I strongly recommend this one. I don't know, I might like this one a little bit more than the first one. The difference is negligible, though, honestly, because I think they're both awesome. But yeah, check this band out. Killer stuff. Greenwitch, Forced Out of Existence. This is the debut full-length from this Los Angeles, California death metal act. I got their Cosmos Steel Blood Trinity EP when I was down in Florida. I've been meaning to check them out for a while, so I was pretty excited to actually go over this one. And yeah, this is just flat-out grimy, old-school death metal. A lot of just festering, gnarly riffs, kind of a gross atmosphere, filthy vocals. I love the vocals on here. Sick dive bombs. They're a little bit kind of like trippy and weird with like some of the distortion and production in here. And yeah, it's just packed full of groove and riffs, and you know, kind of borders a little bit on that like hardcore meets death metal style, but I would still say like this is still purely death metal overall. Like very much in the vein of like Coffin Rot, Sanguisugabog, Undeath, like that sort of thing. It's modern, but with like a lot of old school tropes. Like Rot Alone is, you know, big on the heavy two steps, Spewin' Fluids, which might be my favorite title on here. A little bit more up-tempo, kind of punky, a little bit of that like autopsy vibe to it. But songs like Bodybound and the title track, like those are the ones that kind of stood out to me with just the relentless chugging and just, I don't know, like just pure gnarly, gross energy on it. Eradication Tactics too, I kind of like that one's a little bit slower and more menacing, but that's still just brutal as hell. A lot of this is just riffy, groovy, and gross. It's all things that I already love about death metal, and it's done really well in here. I will say that it is a little bit short. Like this is just a scratch over 30 minutes, and that EP was, I want to say, like maybe a little bit over 24 minutes. So it is a short listen, but honestly, it really doesn't waste any time. Like there's no like drawn out interludes or, you know, like extra atmosphere peppered in. It gets right to the point, right to the riffs, right to the beatdowns, and I dig it. If you're a big fan, again, of Undeath, Sanguisugabog, Coffin Rot, I'd even throw in like Gate Creeper in there too. Check this out. Gnarly listen. Chat Pile, Cool World. This is the second album from this Oklahoma-based sludge metal, noise rock. I don't really know what this band is. They are kind of an oddity. I really enjoyed their last album, God's Country. It was just this twisted, gnarly, anxious wreck of sludgy riffs, weird grooves, and just bonkers vocals, and just a weird, unsettling nature about the music, like Jesus Lizard and Melvins and I don't know, like Glassjaw all got together and formed a band that, I don't know, that kind of embodied all their styles, but also like kind of none of them. And this might be like a little bit better and still weird and just, I don't know, like it's hard to describe. Like, we'll start with the production. The production is very interesting in the sense that the bass is probably the most dominant thing, but it's this sludgy, dirty sound, and the guitars themselves are also sludgy, but again, they don't necessarily like try to overpower the bass. They kind of like add a lot of like squawky atmosphere. And then there's the vocals. The vocals are weird, like, you know, rants from a very disturbed individual that occasionally work its way into like interesting chorus refrains and odd hooks. At times they're like raving maniacal screams. At other times they sound gasping and exhausted and just demented as hell. But honestly, all of it is very catchy, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's kind of like groovy and infectious. Like you get these like fun syncopated rhythms and these weird distant riffs on top of, I mean, almost kind of like groove metal / new metal grooves. Songs like Frownland and Funny Man in particular, they're just weird. Like Frownland has this big syncopated kind of like rhythmic chug to it, but there's also this weird like oddly textured synth that's kind of playing off the weird vocals too. And Funny Man, I mean, part of it kind of reminds me of like Primus or Mr. Bungle. There's just this weird, unsettling, uncomfortable energy to just this band in general. But I do find this one, again, like more listenable. And while they're kind of like more counter melodies, they work together in terms of like forming this, I don't know, kind of unique sound. Like honestly, I can't think of like one band in particular that sounds like this band, and I kind of like that. It's kind of refreshing. If anything, I would say like the rhythm section is the contemporary anchor or whatever, like the thing that sounds probably the most normal, even though it's like hyper distorted and just kind of weird. But everything on top of it is just this weird seasoning to just make you feel uncomfortable and uneasy. The repeated refrains too in the vocals, like they're almost like weird chants that get stuck in your head. I don't know about this band. I know that I like it. I don't know, like, you know, coming back to it, it's just a weird, uncomfortable, anxiety-inducing listen at times, but I feel myself really kind of drawn to this band now, especially with this one, like this one more so than God's Country, because this one I feel as though is like a little bit catchier. I don't know, if you're looking for like just a strange listen that, I don't know, it's metal, but it's not. I don't know. I really don't know with this band. All I know is I like it. And if you're a fan of like Melvins and like, I guess maybe Mr. Bungle, maybe Primus, I don't know. Just check this band out. It's a truly weird listen. And yeah, probably one of the more unique things I think I've listened to this year. Solitude, Aeturnus, Alone. This is the 6th, and as it stands, the final album from this epic doom metal act from Texas. I would say, you know, pretty much underground legends. I've been actively trying to hunt down more of their albums. Spoiler alert, next one will definitely feature some Solitude, Aeturnus, and actually it will feature the only albums I'm missing. I've become such a huge fan of this band over the years. I can't believe I actually slept on them for so long. I mean, hell, I didn't even know about Robert Lowe as a vocalist until, King of the Grey Islands with Candlemass, which that album's absolutely amazing. And once again, this is another killer album from this band. Just pure, flat-out, riffy, doomy awesomeness. Lowe's vocals, while they're not as high as they were in the past, I really like his register on here. He's still got that gruffness to his voice. And again, much like the last one that I got, Adigo, I don't know, however the hell you say that one, I'm screwing it up. Either way, I like the more Alice in Chains like vocal harmonies. It just fits in really well with just the amazing riff work on, well, this album and that one. I will say I like the vocal production more on that one than I do on this one. Sometimes the vocal production just feels a little bit odd, like where they sit in the mix or, you know, what effects they actually have on his vocals. But when it comes down to the music, like, this is kind of exactly what I want from the band. The opening track, Scent of Death, I think is absolutely amazing. It's slow and brooding. There's a really nice breakdown on it. Same thing with Tomorrow's Dead, Upon Within. But there's also some good up-tempo stuff like Is There and Waiting, which, you know, kind of, you know, give it a little bit more of like a kind of a groove metal punch to it. Sightless as well, even though it is a little bit slower, it has that dreary Alice in Chains sort of vibe, which Robert Lowe does a great job with that. Like the vocal harmonies, I think, are just killer when it comes down to like them just kind of doing that particular style. Burning, though, was kind of an interesting standout because at a certain point in that song, it almost kind of sounds like Pantera. Minus the vocals, like he doesn't sound like Phil, but the riff work is very Dimebag-ish. Like it's a little bit more aggro and it's just kind of got this like gnarly, just Pantera groove to it. And for the most part, the songs are longer on here, which, I mean, that's to be kind of expected with nu metal in general. But they're well paced. They don't really feel like they drag too much on here. And yeah, overall, this is another Solitude Aeturnus album that I really dig. Again, I still can't believe I slept on this band for so long, being a Candlemass fan for, God, quite a few years. But I'm catching up, actually rather caught up, but again, save that for another collection update. But yeah, if you're a big fan of, I mean, Candlemass is kind of the big one. Also, Crypt Sermon too. Like, the more I listen to Solitude Aeturnus, the more I can hear, you know, where Crypt Sermon probably got a lot of their influence. Anything remotely close to those two bands in particular, check this out. This is killer. Mastodon, Crack the Sky. This is the 15th anniversary special edition. They gave their fourth album, Prog Opus, the deluxe treatment, and I mean, it's no secret, this is my favorite Mastodon album. I love every track in it. This is, I mean, I would still say kind of their watershed moment. I mean, I love all their albums, but very few things top this. And I'll open it up a little bit here. I don't want to get everything out because I don't want a whole bunch of stuff falling out. But yeah, it has a whole bunch of killer artwork in here. You know, of course, lyrics. But this also has these almost like stamps, like a bunch of individual art pieces. And this is a 3-disc version. Now, of course, it has the original version on there, which I have jammed to death. My copy, actually, I think was a special edition too, because it came with a DVD about the making of the album. But this also includes an instrumental version of the entire album, which, honestly, I love the vocals on the entire album. But I will say that the Tsar and the Last Baron work really well as instrumentals. The way they're written, they kind of lend themselves to being instrumentals. And you know, without like the lyrical progressions and themes and blah, 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 you can really just kind of like hone in and focus on the music. And I mean, those two songs are giant standouts on an album, in my opinion, full of standouts. Now, the third disc in here is actually a Blu-ray, and it contains like all of their live optical stuff that they play on the big screens and such. Now, I haven't gone over that yet because, well, when I got this, I just kind of sat back and basked in the excellence of this album, both the instrumental version and the regular version. But I'm pretty sure it's cool. I've seen them live numerous times, and those visuals they like to pepper in are pretty damn awesome. But yeah, I don't know if this is like the most necessary buy. Like, this is probably just for the fans only. But honestly, I mean, the instrumental version is really cool to listen to. And I'm sure the Blu-ray is pretty awesome too. But yeah, I would still say check it out. Like, I want to say it is a little expensive. It's around like the $35 to $40 mark. But if you're a big fanboy of the album like me, I don't know, I might check it out. Hermano, When the Moon Was High. This is the fourth album. I mean, it's more of an EP, honestly. I'll get to that. And honestly, the first release in about like 17 years from this California-based stoner rock, desert rock band. Yet another band fronted by John Garcia, formerly of Caius. Honestly, in terms of like, you know, post-Caius bands, this was probably the second one I got into because I got into Slow Burn like not too long after Caius. And when I saw this was coming out, I just instantly pounced on it. I'm a big fan of Dare I Say and Only a Suggestion. Love those two albums in particular. And Well, all right, yeah, this is definitely more of an EP. It has 2 new tracks and then 4 live tracks. And the 2 new tracks are, I mean, they're pretty short. Like the opening track, Breathe, is the straightforward rocker. It's got a great riff, great groove. John Garcia 100% still has it vocally. I love that dude's vocals. Like, there's something about his vocal delivery that's just, instantly home in terms of like listening to stoner rock. If I hear like a whole bunch of fuzzy drony riffs and then followed by his just kind of gravelly crooning and just like kind of like classic rock grit to his voice, I'm instantly happy. And Breathe is a solid song. It's a little bit short, but it's got a good hook. And then Never Boulevard is surprisingly kind of an acoustic number. It's like a desert rock jam kind of ballad. It sounds like they kind of just sat around a bonfire with acoustic guitars and bongos. And, well, I mean, there's definitely some electric stuff in there too. And, might have indulged in the atmosphere with a little bit of brain seasoning and just kind of jammed out a song. And it's pretty damn pleasant. Strangely enough, though, it's the live tracks in here that I ended up really digging because I've never seen this band live. And they're from 2 different sets. The first one, Brother Bjork, is live at W2, which I'm not sure what that fest is. And then the last 3 tracks are from Hellfest. And they all sound awesome. In fact, this band sounds a lot heavier live than they do on their albums. The guitars sound a little bit more biting. The drums have just this big punch to them. And John Garcia sounds great live. Like, I'm really hoping that this is just sort of a teaser to kind of like, all right, hey, we're back. We're going to get around to touring. And with that, hopefully come out with like a proper full length because, again, I would say that this is definitely more of an EP. But it works in terms of like being a teaser. Like, I'm interested in terms of what will follow this. I had totally forgotten this band had been like kind of inactive for a while just because John Garcia's had a litany of other projects that he's just been doing that, well, kind of sound remarkably like Hermano and Caius and Slowburn and etc. So yeah, I would say this is also kind of only for the fans, though. I do like the new tracks, but yeah, I want to hear like a proper full length after this. But yeah, this was fun. This is good to revisit. And again, the live tracks absolutely smoke. So yeah, if you're a longtime fan of any of the bands that John Garcia has ever been in, just check this out. It's pretty awesome. Tigers of Pantang, Spellbound. This is the second album from this new wave of British heavy metal band that I kind of ignored. Like, I was a little bit late to like Angel Witch and so on. And I mean, honestly, someone probably told me about this band and I probably said something like, who the hell are the Tigers of Poontang? I joke, but seriously, looking up stuff on this album, the drummer's name was Brian Big Dick. So yeah, juvenile jokes probably are long running with this band. Now again, I've been meaning to check out this band and I'm glad that I checked out this one because from what I gather, this band's discography is kind of hit or miss, and I probably have what people largely consider their high point here. This is just flat out classic new album, kind of borders on hard rock. Like, this is like, kind of one part, maybe like a little bit more Thin Lizzy and Budgie, but also, you can kind of hear like that kind of Iron Maiden Killers sort of energy on it. The vocals kind of wander someplace between like Paul Di'Anno when they're more raspy and aggressive to like kind of Foreigner-ish at times. This band definitely was big on hooks, like hooks, melodies. You have a good amount of like fast up-tempo songs with just big hooky riffs. Like the opening track, Gangland, is just absolutely amazing. But you also have like a lot of like straightforward kind of like radio rockers, like Take It, Hellbound, Blackjack. Like, they're just hooky rock songs. They're not necessarily metal songs, but I don't know, like they kind of walk that line, and I would definitely say that this band was going for more accessibility. Maybe not so much on this one, but like the following albums, this band kind of they kind of took it like a Def Leppard route. And the similarities between the two bands is not just restricted to their love of large cats. Like, they kind of went like that Pyromania direction a little bit more. And it seems like they kind of became another pop metal, like more commercial 80s metal band. And I don't know, they kind of became like, largely forgotten, I guess. But this album, I think, is awesome. Like, this kind of captures everything I love about early new album. It's got the harmonies, it's got the riffs. I think the vocals on here are great, especially and surprisingly on the more ballady Mirror. I think that's a great song, and the vocals just really carry it. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful melodies, but the vocals, I just feel like, they're kind of the centerpiece of that song. There are a couple songs that do run into one another, like Hellbound and Silver and Gold. I feel like they're just stylistically too similar, and they're only separated by one track, so when I was listening to it, I thought, wait, did I just kind of rewind the CD a little bit? Did I skip back a track or something? But overall, this was just a good listen. Like, just catchy hooks, regardless if they're metal hooks or rock hooks. The story so far in particular, I think, is just a really infectious, catchy rock single. I think that was actually released as a single before this album even dropped. So they kind of knew what they were doing with that one. But yeah, this is a solid album. I definitely want to check out the debut, and I might be a little bit wary about the stuff that followed after this, but I think this is just a really solid album. If you're a big fan of Angel Witch and early Iron Maiden, a little bit of Judas Priest, Thin Lizzy, Budgie, stuff like that, check this album out. Really good stuff. And finally, we have Rot Coven. Nightmares Devour the Waking World. This is the debut album from this sludge, death, noise metal act. This is my first experience with the band, and this one kind of has like an interesting story in terms of how it got to me. The band themselves actually sent this to me, which thank you guys very much, but that kind of came courtesy of my buddy Nate Vaught, who did the awesome artwork on here. He prompted them to send me a copy, mainly because he really liked the band and he really wanted to show off this awesome cover art, which is probably displayed in much grander fashion over my shoulder here. And yeah, Nate, you did a fantastic job in this twisting, dark, I don't even really know how to describe this other than I kind of like the fact that there's like a little bit of a comic book flair. Like, I'm still a giant comic book nerd and I love seeing that kind of art. But anyway, down to the music. This is a 2-disc album. It is 8 songs and it is about 90 minutes long. And man, is this absolutely horrifying and dark. If I had listened to this by the time that we got together with Melty and done our most disturbing listens album, I might have actually thrown this in as an honorable mention. It fits the bill quite well. This album lays on this droning, ambient, disturbing atmosphere throughout the entire listen. You have like electronic kind of buzzing and hissing combined with guitars, electronic percussion that's predominantly tribal when it's actually there. Like, there are long stretches where it is just droning ambience and muttered and screamed vocals in the background. Very akin to bands like Gnaw Their Tongues, Primitive Man. I would even say like a bit of Godflesh and Author and Punisher in there too. The whole album is just a suffocating listen, like the frequently crackling and distorted vocals, which, are definitely shifted and twisted and, kind of just mutated on this album. And then guitar work in here is a lot of like repetitive squeals and like weird soundscapes and such. The whole thing feels like the score to like a horror movie with no dialogue, or maybe a snuff film. I think either would work. Now, there were a couple of songs that did stand out to me, namely because they had at least like more of a, I would say, like traditional structure, or at least melody. Antimatter Halo in particular, I think, is an awesome track. That one actually has like kind of like a post-metal build, and there is a like melodic hook that kind of carries through. Like, I'm not saying that's the most pleasant melodic hook, but it's definitely a melodic hook. Same thing with Inverted Chasm, albeit that one's like more of just like doomy, droning riffs. Like, it's not so much about like feedback, it's just about like carrying on like this big, droning, menacing riff to kind of go with the plodding rhythm. There's even like a D-beat section that kind of comes out of nowhere on Accretion Disc Necropolis, which was kind of nice because, I'll be honest, like at points in this I was kind of like zoning out, like it's kind of trance-inducing, it's very hypnotic. A couple of these tracks are just soundscapes, they're really not necessarily songs, like Queen of the Void and Psychological Contamination Zone, like it's just ambience and such. So, I kind of drifted, but hearing some moments that really jumped out made this a little bit more engaging, or at least snapped me away from my mental journey into a cosmic void. Now, while this isn't something I would usually listen to, just in terms of like, hey, I want to kick back and relax and listen to something that sounds like, I don't know, someone got a field recording of like hell, I still appreciate it for the overall sonic torment that it is. Like, this is impressively heavy, impressively dark, And when they did get down to like something that had like a little bit more rhythm and a little bit more substance to it outside of the atmosphere, it was really good. So yeah, if you're a big fan again of like Gnaw Their Tongues, I would say specifically Gnaw Their Tongues, Primitive Man, and just droning ambience and like, I don't know, just heavy oppressive darkness, check this album out. And once again, thank you guys very much for sending this to me. And that will do it for yet another collection update, and I am actually getting ready to shoot the next one probably tomorrow. But yeah, I'm trying to get as much of these done before I get down to year-end lists and such, and then, you know, get down to other stuff. Like, I still need to finish listening to Motley Crue, to be honest, which we're probably going to do that in the new year. We definitely want to get down to year-end lists, and this has been an arduous process because, once again, this year has been absolutely loaded with killer music. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now have memberships. They are only 99 cents. We probably already started doing our members only live streams, which is the big perk for this. There's also a good chance I added another stupid emoji in there for you guys to throw in the live chat and such. This is, again, pretty much the new way to support the channel if you want to help us out. There's a join button down below. We also still have our store too, thrallsmetal.com, t-shirts and hats and such, and there's a link down below in the description for that as well. We appreciate whatever you guys can do, and we are eternally thankful for everything you already do. This channel's success is large in part due to you guys. All the comments, the shares, you know, even just like coming up and talking to us, it shows this whole journey has been absolutely amazing. And I know I say this all the time, but it absolutely means the world to us. So thank you so much for all that. And we will catch you later.